I don't know what made me say it.
Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was bitter. Maybe I just wanted to hurt him the way I felt hurt, like a slow-burning resentment had been sitting in my chest for years, and I didn't even realize it until it spilled out of me like poison. It wasn't planned. It wasn't meant to be a bomb that blew up my marriage. But that's exactly what it did. One second, we were sitting at the dinner table, the kids already asleep, the soft hum of the dishwasher in the background, and the next, I was watching my husband's entire world shatter because of something that should have never left my mouth. He had been talking about something mundane, something about how Jake was struggling with his reading again, and maybe we should look into tutoring, and I wasn't even really listening because I had spent the entire day drowning in the never-ending list of things that needed to be done: laundry, dishes, helping Lily with her school project, making dinner, picking up the mess that nobody else seemed to notice. And when he casually said, "I think Jake just takes after me with this stuff," I was never a great reader as a kid either. I looked at him, exhausted, frustrated, and before I could stop myself, I scoffed and said, "Yeah, I guess your genetics kind of ruined them, huh?" I didn't even look at him at first. I was too busy stabbing at my plate with my fork, barely tasting my food, letting the words sit there between us like they weren't a grenade I had just pulled the pin out of. It wasn't until the silence stretched too long, until the air in the room shifted into something thick and suffocating, that I finally glanced up and saw his face.
He wasn't angry, not yet.
He just looked confused, like he had misheard me, like maybe I had said something else and his brain was struggling to process what it had actually been. "What?" His voice was quiet, too quiet, like he was giving me a chance to take it back, to tell him it was just a bad joke, a slip of the tongue, something that didn't mean what it sounded like. But instead of stopping, I doubled down, because that's what I do, because admitting I was wrong has never come easy to me, because some part of me was too deep into my own resentment to realize I was digging my own grave. "I mean, come on, Danny," I said, forcing a light laugh like that would somehow make it better. "I thought at least one of them would have my brains, but it looks like your side of the family won out." That was it. That was the moment I saw something in him break. His expression didn't change at first, but I felt it in the way he pushed his plate slightly away from him, in the way his hands curled into fists on the table, in the way he blinked just a little too slowly, like he was trying to process how the woman he had built a life with, the woman he had loved, had just looked him in the eye and told him she thought he had nothing worth passing down to his own children. When he finally spoke, his voice was eerily calm, but there was something underneath it, something heavy, something sharp. "So, that's what you think of me?" He didn't raise his voice, didn't slam his fists on the table, didn't do anything dramatic. He just sat there, staring at me like I was a stranger, like he was trying to figure out when exactly the person he had married had turned into this. I should have apologized. I should have said it was just a stupid joke, that I didn't mean it, that I was tired and overwhelmed, and it just slipped out. But instead, I rolled my eyes because my pride is a disease, because I wasn't ready to back down, because some ugly part of me wanted him to feel as small as I had felt for years. "Oh, don't start," I said, sighing as I pushed my own plate away. "You're acting like I insulted your entire existence. I'm just saying, they could have turned out better." His chair scraped against the floor as he stood up, slow and deliberate, and for the first time, I felt it. The shift, the unraveling, the weight of what I had just done pressing down on me with full force.
He didn't yell.
He didn't call me names. He just shook his head once, exhaled through his nose, and turned toward the hallway. "I can't even look at you right now." His voice was quiet, but there was something final in it, something that made my stomach drop. And then he was gone, disappearing into the bedroom, leaving me alone at the dinner table with nothing but my own words echoing in my head like a death sentence. I sat there for a long time, staring at the spot where he had been sitting, waiting for the anger inside me to cool, waiting for the part of me that had wanted to hurt him to feel satisfied. But all I felt was this cold, gnawing dread curling around my ribs, this awful realization settling in my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. I had crossed a line, and I didn't know if there was any coming back from it. I thought he would come back after an hour, maybe two. I told myself he just needed time to cool off, that he was being dramatic, that he would walk back into the kitchen, sit down, and act like I hadn't just spat in the face of everything he had ever given me. That was how our fights always went. He got quiet, I got annoyed, and then, eventually, we just moved past it without really talking about anything. That was how it worked, how it had always worked, and I saw no reason why this time would be any different. But when I finally got up and went to our bedroom, expecting to find him lying in bed, scrolling through his phone, pretending like the entire conversation hadn't happened, I found the room empty. The closet door was open, one of the drawers was halfway pulled out, and his duffel bag was missing from the top shelf. For a second, I just stood there, my brain trying to piece together what I was looking at, refusing to believe it meant what it so clearly did. I walked back out to the hallway, my pulse picking up, my feet moving faster than I wanted them to, like I could somehow stop this from happening if I just got to him in time. When I reached the front door, the sight of him standing there, his duffel bag slung over his shoulder, his car keys dangling from his fingers, knocked the breath out of me in a way I wasn't prepared for. He wasn't just going for a drive. He wasn't just stepping out for air. He was leaving. And for the first time that night, something inside me twisted in a way I couldn't ignore. "Where are you going?" My voice came out sharper than I intended, like I was accusing him of something, like he was the one doing something wrong. He didn't look at me right away, just exhaled through his nose like he had already played this conversation out in his head and had no interest in engaging with it. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat, emotionless, like he had already checked out. "I need space." The words hit harder than I expected. He had never asked for space before. Not once, not in all the years we had been together. He had always been the type to stay, to endure, to let things blow over. He never walked away. And that realization, the quiet weight of it, made something hot and ugly rise in my chest. "You're really leaving over this?" I crossed my arms, forcing myself to sound unaffected, like I didn't care, like this was some ridiculous overreaction that I wasn't going to entertain. "Because I made a joke? You're actually packing a bag and running off because of that?" He let out a quiet laugh, but there was nothing amused about it. He looked at me then, finally, and the exhaustion in his eyes made my stomach tighten. "A joke." He shook his head once, his fingers tightening around his keys.
Right.
That's what that was. Yes, it was. I snapped, my nails digging into my arms as I held them tighter against my body. "I don't know why you're acting like I said something unforgivable. You're blowing this way out of proportion." He tilted his head slightly, studying me, and the look on his face was one I couldn't place. Something unfamiliar, something distant. "Do you even hear yourself?" His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't sharp or loud or anything that would have made it easier to fight back against. It was just tired. "Do you even care how that felt? Or are you just pissed that I'm not sitting here letting you pretend it didn't happen?" I opened my mouth, ready to snap back, ready to shut this down before it turned into something bigger, but he shook his head again and looked away before I could say anything. "Forget it. It doesn't matter." "If it doesn't matter, then why are you leaving?" I demanded, stepping closer, feeling the panic creeping in even as I tried to push it down, even as I told myself this was just another fight, that he would come back, that he always came back. "You're going to just walk out instead of talking to me?" He let out another breath, rubbing a hand over his face like he was trying to physically wipe away whatever he was feeling. "Because I don't have anything left to say, Claire." The way he said my name made my stomach drop. He never called me that during fights. It was always babe or you or something detached, something that didn't feel so final. But the way he said it now, the way he put my name in that sentence like it was the last time he was going to say it at all, made my chest tighten in a way I wasn't prepared for. "You're being ridiculous," I said, my voice wavering slightly even as I tried to keep it steady, even as I told myself I wasn't scared, that this was just him trying to make a point. "You're going to sleep in a hotel or at your brother's for a night, and then you're going to come home and realize how stupid this is."
He didn't argue with me.
He didn't tell me I was wrong. He just stared at me for a second longer, then nodded once like he had accepted something I hadn't caught up to yet. "Maybe." And then he turned, opened the door, and walked out. I didn't follow him. I didn't call out after him or run to stop him or do any of the things I told myself I would if this moment ever came. I just stood there, my arms still crossed, my chest tight, my nails pressing into my skin as I listened to the sound of his car engine starting, the quiet hum of it fading into the night. I waited for him to come back. I waited for my phone to buzz with a message saying he just needed a few hours, that he would be home soon, that this wasn't as big as I was making it out to be. But the night stretched on and the house stayed quiet, and for the first time, I started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, I had finally pushed him too far. I thought I would hear from him by morning, maybe a text, maybe a missed call, something to let me know he had calmed down and was ready to talk like an adult instead of acting like a child running away from a problem. I woke up earlier than usual, my body restless, my mind trying to convince itself that I wasn't waiting for my phone to light up, that I wasn't listening for the sound of his car pulling back into the driveway. But when I checked my phone, there was nothing. No texts, no missed calls, nothing to acknowledge that I even existed. That was the first time I felt it, that quiet, creeping unease in the back of my mind telling me that maybe, just maybe, I had miscalculated this whole thing. I spent the morning forcing myself through the routine, getting the kids ready, making breakfast, pretending like everything was normal when I knew deep down that it wasn't. Jake noticed first, his little face scrunching up as he looked around the kitchen, his voice uncertain when he finally asked, "Where's Dad?" I almost said, he had to work early, but something about lying to him so easily made my stomach twist, so I just shrugged and said he needed some time to himself. Jake didn't ask anything else, just nodded and focused back on his cereal, but I could see it on his face, the way he kept glancing at the front door like he was expecting it to swing open any second. By noon, I was irritated. Not worried, not guilty, just irritated. I wasn't the one acting crazy. I wasn't the one who had packed a bag and left in the middle of the night like I was the victim of some great injustice. I was the one who had stayed, the one who was still making sure things got done, the one who had to answer the kids' questions while he was off sulking over a joke. I grabbed my phone, my fingers moving quickly as I typed, "Are you done with whatever this is? Or are you planning on making this a whole thing?" I stared at the message for a few seconds, waiting, telling myself I didn't care if he ignored it. But the longer the screen stayed silent, the harder it became to hold on to that thought. I set my phone down, paced the kitchen for a while, checked my phone again, still nothing. The irritation turned into something sharper, something I didn't want to name. By the afternoon, I caved and called him, putting my phone on speaker as I folded laundry, acting like I wasn't listening for the sound of his voice. The call rang out, going straight to voicemail, and before I could stop myself, I was already calling again, my chest tightening when I got the same result. "You've reached Daniel, leave a message." That robotic tone, his voice, distant and cold, the beep that followed, the silence. I didn't even know what to say, so I just ended the call, throwing my phone onto the couch, my stomach twisting because this wasn't normal, because he had never ignored me like this before. I didn't want to admit it, but I started feeling stupid. I kept replaying last night, the way he looked at me, the way his voice had sounded when he said my name like it was something foreign, something he didn't recognize anymore. Maybe I had expected him to yell, to get angry, to say something cruel back, but the way he had just stopped, the way he had shut down, packed a bag, walked out, it was different. And now, after all these years of fights that we just brushed off, I wasn't sure what came next. By evening, the anger had come back. If he wanted to play this game, fine. If he thought ignoring me would somehow make me feel guilty, he was wasting his time. I made dinner, put the kids to bed, and refused to be the pathetic wife sitting around waiting for a man to come home. But when the house was finally quiet, when there was nothing left to distract me, when the bed felt too empty, too cold, I finally let myself feel it, the heavy weight of what I had done. I grabbed my phone, opened our text thread, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, trying to figure out what to even say. "Are you coming home?" "No," that sounded desperate. "Can you stop being an idiot and talk to me?" "No." Too defensive. I started typing, deleting, retyping, my pride battling against the growing fear in my chest. Finally, I just wrote, "Danny, where are you?
Can we talk?"
And hit send before I could change my mind. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Nothing. I checked his location, disabled. I called his brother. "Hey, Claire," his voice was casual. Too casual, like he already knew why I was calling. "Is he with you?" I didn't bother with small talk, didn't pretend I wasn't calling for exactly the reason we both knew I was. He was quiet for a second and then, yeah. Something cold settled in my stomach. Put him on. He doesn't want to talk right now. I felt my teeth clench, my fingers tightening around my phone. Then tell him to stop acting like a damn child and call his wife back. His brother sighed, and that sigh, the exhaustion in it, made me angrier than anything. Claire, maybe you should give him some time. Time for what? I snapped, my voice rising. Because I made one comment he didn't like? Because I didn't sugarcoat something for once? He's the one who left, so why am I the one being punished? You know it's not just one comment, his brother said, and the way he said it, like he knew something I didn't, like this had been building up for longer than I realized, made my throat tighten. I didn't answer.
I didn't know what to say.
I'll tell him you called, he said, his voice softer now, like he thought I was going to break. I hung up before I could hear anything else. I sat there, staring at my phone, my hands trembling slightly, my chest tight because for the first time, I realized this wasn't like the other fights, that maybe this time he wasn't just waiting to cool off. Maybe this time he was actually thinking about leaving. And the worst part? I wasn't sure if I even had the right to stop him. I woke up before the alarm, my body stiff, my mind already wired with a kind of exhaustion that didn't come from lack of sleep, but from something deeper, something that sat in my chest and refused to leave. I reached for my phone the second I opened my eyes, my fingers moving on autopilot, checking messages that weren't there, checking missed calls that hadn't come, checking his location that was still disabled. It had been 2 days. 2 full days of nothing. No calls, no texts, no sign that he was planning on coming home, and I could feel it now, the slow, creeping realization that this wasn't just him cooling off, that this wasn't just another fight we would ignore until it faded into the background. This was something else. This was him pulling away in a way he never had before, and I didn't know how to stop it. I forced myself out of bed, moving through the motions of the morning, getting the kids up, making breakfast, answering Jake's questions about why Dad hadn't come home, yet with vague reassurances that felt emptier each time I said them. I kept expecting him to walk through the door like nothing had happened, to drop his bag by the couch and act like I hadn't spent the last 48 hours alternating between anger and panic, but the house stayed quiet, and the silence made my skin crawl. By the afternoon, I was done waiting. I had told myself I wouldn't go to his brother's place, that I wouldn't be that woman showing up unannounced like some desperate, abandoned wife, but after 2 days of unanswered messages and the tight, suffocating feeling in my chest, I stopped caring about how it looked. I got in the car, gripped the steering wheel too hard, and drove. When I pulled up to the house, I sat there for a moment, my stomach twisted in a way that made me feel sick. I shouldn't have had to do this. He should have come home. He should have picked up his phone. He should have at least had the decency to tell me what he was thinking instead of leaving me to piece it together like some pathetic woman who didn't even realize her husband had one foot out the door. I got out, walked up to the door, and knocked. His brother opened it almost immediately, like he had been expecting me, his face unreadable as he stepped aside to let me in. I didn't ask if he was here. I already knew. I could feel it, the weight of his presence, the way the house felt different now that I knew he was inside, but still hadn't come to me. He was in the living room, sitting on the couch, his phone in his hands, his shoulders tense in a way that told me he had probably heard the knock and chose to stay exactly where he was instead of meeting me at the door. He looked up when I walked in, but there was no surprise in his face, no guilt, no anger. Just something cold, something distant, something that made my stomach twist tighter. "You've been ignoring me," I said, my voice sharp, my arms crossing before I could stop myself, like I needed some kind of barrier between us. He exhaled through his nose, setting his phone down beside him, his eyes still on me but unreadable in a way I hated. I needed space. For 2 days? I let out a laugh, but it was bitter, clipped, nothing close to amusement. That's funny, because usually when people need space, they say something before disappearing. His jaw tensed slightly, but he didn't argue. I didn't know what to say. That's bullshit. I took a step closer, my pulse hammering now, my frustration bubbling up past the unease, past the guilt, past everything else I had been trying to ignore.
You left.
You packed a bag and left like I was just supposed to figure out what that meant. Do you even care what this has been like for me? Do you even care that I've been sitting at home, waiting for you to decide when you're done punishing me? Punishing you? His voice didn't rise, but there was something sharp behind it now, something dangerous. Claire, you sat across from me at our dinner table and told me our kids would have been better off if they weren't mine. And you want to act like I'm the one who's punishing you. I opened my mouth, ready to fight, ready to tell him he was twisting my words, but nothing came out. Because he wasn't twisting them. Because that was exactly what I had said. His shoulders dropped slightly, like he had been expecting me to argue, like he had already braced himself for the excuses, the justifications, the casual dismissal. When I didn't give it to him, he just exhaled and looked away. I needed time to think. Think about what? My voice came out quieter than I wanted it to, something unsettled creeping into my chest now, something I didn't want to name. He looked back at me then, his face unreadable again, but this time I could feel it, the weight behind it, the hesitation, the answer he didn't want to say. About whether I can keep doing this. The room felt too small suddenly, the air too thick, my own heartbeat too loud in my ears. Are you serious? My voice shook slightly, and I hated that he could hear it, hated that he was making me feel like this. I don't know. His voice was steady, too steady, like he had already made peace with whatever was happening inside his head. But I know I can't just go back like nothing happened. I wanted to tell him he was being ridiculous, that he was blowing this up into something bigger than it was, that we always fought and always moved past it, that he was just dragging this out for no reason, but the way he was looking at me, the way his fingers curled into fists against his thighs, the way his shoulders stayed tense even as he tried to look calm, I knew this wasn't like before. I don't get it. I finally said, my arms still crossed, my body still tense, every muscle in me screaming at me to fight back, to make him feel as stupid as he was making me feel. So, what? You just get to decide if this marriage is worth it? You get to sit here and think about whether you still want to be a husband and a father like it's some kind of choice. He let out a quiet laugh, but it was bitter, hollow, nothing close to amusement. You made it sound like it was a choice when you said what you said. Like maybe you weren't so sure if I should be a father at all. The words hit harder than I expected, and for a second, I just stood there, my mouth slightly open, my throat tight, because I had nothing to say to that, because there was no excuse, because maybe, deep down, I knew that I had finally pushed him too far. He exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face before finally standing up. I just need more time. And what am I supposed to do while you figure it out? My voice was sharper now, my nails digging into my arms, my chest tight. His jaw tensed again, his hands tightening at his sides. I don't know, Claire, but I need space. And with that, he walked past me, leaving me standing there, alone in a house that suddenly didn't feel like mine anymore. I didn't hear from him for the next 3 days. No calls, no texts, no half-hearted attempts to check in, nothing. It was like he had carved me out of his life in a single movement, like I had been cut from his world so cleanly that he didn't even need to look back. I told myself I wasn't going to be the one to chase him, that if he wanted space so badly, he could sit in it and see how much good it actually did him. But as each hour dragged on without so much as a sign that he was even thinking about coming back, I started to feel it, that slow, gnawing dread wrapping itself around my ribs, making it harder to breathe, making it harder to ignore the fact that this time felt different, that this time, he wasn't just waiting for me to get over myself. This time, he was waiting for something else, something bigger, something that I couldn't control. I kept going through the motions, getting the kids to school, cleaning the house, answering the texts from my sister asking if we were okay with vague responses that didn't answer the question. I knew what she wanted to hear. She wanted me to admit that I had messed up, that I should have never said what I said, that I was afraid he wouldn't come back, but I wasn't ready to say any of that yet. I wasn't ready to accept that this wasn't just a fight anymore. This was something else entirely, and I had no idea how to fix it. It wasn't until the 4th day that I finally let myself break. I was sitting in the living room, staring at my phone, my fingers hovering over his name, my stomach twisting because I had never gone this long without speaking to him, because I had never been forced to sit in the silence and wonder if he was already deciding what his life looked like without me in it. I told myself I would just call once. Just once. If he didn't pick up, I would leave it alone. I would let him have whatever space he thought he needed, but I needed to know where his head was, needed to know if he was even planning on coming home.
The phone rang. Once. Twice. 3 times.
And then, for the first time in 4 days, I heard his voice. Claire. His voice was even, calm, like he had already played this conversation out in his head and had nothing left to give to it. I exhaled, gripping the edge of the couch, forcing myself to keep my voice steady. Are you coming home? There was a long pause, a silence, so heavy that it felt like a wall between us, something thick, something I couldn't push through no matter how hard I tried. When he finally spoke, it wasn't the answer I had been expecting, and somehow, that made it worse. I don't know. I felt my throat tighten, my chest go hot with something sharp and desperate because he had never said anything like that before, because I had never heard him sound so unsure, because for the first time since this all started, I realized that maybe he wasn't just taking space to cool off. Maybe he was really thinking about leaving. You don't know. I repeated, my voice flat, my nails digging into my palm. What the hell is that supposed to mean? He let out a breath, and I hated that I could hear how tired he sounded, hated that I had done that to him, that I had turned this man, the one who had always been patient, always been steady, into someone who sounded like he was barely holding it together. It means I don't know. I shook my head, pressing the phone tighter against my ear. No, Danny, you don't get to do this. You don't get to just disappear for 4 days and then tell me you don't know if you're coming home. That's not how this works. How does this work, Claire? His voice was still calm, but there was something behind it now, something harder, something that made my stomach twist. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you get to say whatever you want, and I'm supposed to just sit there and take it. And I think I'm finally starting to realize I don't have to do that anymore. The words hit harder than I expected, knocking the breath out of me in a way I hadn't been prepared for. So, what? You're just done? My voice came out sharper than I wanted it to, angrier, like I could somehow push him back into place if I made it seem like he was the one being ridiculous. You're just going to throw everything away over one fight? One fight. He let out a quiet, humorless laugh, and something about it made my stomach go cold. Claire, you don't get it, do you? You really don't see it. See what? My heart was pounding now, my hands clammy as I gripped the phone, my body rigid because I had a feeling I wasn't going to like whatever he was about to say. He exhaled again, and when he spoke, his voice was quieter, more resigned. That I don't think I've been happy for a long time, and I don't think you have either. The silence that followed was deafening. I felt something in me falter, something I had been holding on to, some sense of control that I had convinced myself I still had. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice even. So, what are you saying? He didn't answer right away, and that hesitation, that pause, was worse than anything else he could have said. I'm saying I don't know if I want to come back to this. It was the first time he had ever said anything like that, the first time he had ever given me even the smallest indication that he had thought about leaving, and I didn't know what to do with it. I had always assumed he would stay, no matter what, that he would put up with whatever I threw at him, because that's just what he did, because that's what he had always done. But now, for the first time, I could feel it slipping away, the safety net I hadn't even realized I had been counting on, and I didn't know how to stop it. I licked my lips, swallowing against the tightness in my throat. Danny, don't do this. I need more time. His voice was still calm, still steady, but there was something final in it, something that made my hands go numb. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk. And then, before I could say anything else, before I could try to fix it, he hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, my fingers gripping the phone so tightly that my knuckles ached, my chest heavy with something I didn't want to name. He had never hung up on me before. And for the first time, I started to wonder if I had already lost him. I don't know what I expected after that call. Maybe for him to show up at the house the next day. Maybe for him to realize he was making a mistake and tell me that he was ready to come home. Maybe for him to at least text and say something that would make me feel like I still had some control over this.
But he didn't do any of those things.
Days passed, and then a week, and then another, and every time I checked my phone, it was just more silence, More proof that he wasn't sitting in his brother's guest room waiting for me to reach out and make things right. He wasn't waiting for anything.
He was just gone.
I told myself I wasn't going to be the first one to break, that I wasn't going to chase him like some pathetic woman who couldn't handle a little space. But when 2 weeks passed and I still hadn't heard from him, I started calling again. He ignored the first few, sent me to voicemail on the next, and when I finally texted him, "You can't avoid me forever," he responded with a single message that knocked the breath out of me before I even finished reading it. "We need to talk. Can I come by tomorrow?" I stared at the screen for a long time, my chest tight, my mind racing through every possible reason why he would say it like that, why he would want to come to the house instead of just calling me back. I typed yeah and then deleted it, then typed "what do you want to talk about?"
And deleted that too.
Finally, I just wrote okay and sent it before I could overthink it. The next day, I made sure the kids were out of the house before he got here. I told myself it was because I didn't want them around if we ended up fighting, but deep down, I think I already knew that whatever this conversation was, it wasn't going to end with him walking back through the front door like nothing had happened. I heard his car pull up outside, and for a second, I just stood there, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter, trying to steady my breathing, trying to prepare myself for whatever he was about to say. When I finally opened the door, he looked the same. That was the worst part. He wasn't a mess, wasn't disheveled, didn't look like a man who had been losing sleep over this the way I had. He looked calm, steady, like he had already made his decision before he even knocked on the door. He stepped inside, glancing around like the house was already foreign to him, like it wasn't the same place he had lived in for years. He didn't sit, didn't take off his jacket, just stood there in the entryway, his hands in his pockets, his eyes unreadable as they finally met mine. "I don't want to drag this out," he said, his voice even, too even, like he had rehearsed it. "I've thought about this a lot, and I don't think I can come back from it." My stomach twisted, my hands clenched at my sides, my mind scrambling for something to say, something to throw back at him that would make him feel as blindsided as I did in that moment. "You don't think you can come back from it?" I repeated, my voice sharper than I meant it to be, my chest tightening. "You mean from a stupid comment? From one fight?" He exhaled, shaking his head slightly, his jaw tightening. "It's not just one fight, Claire. It's everything. It's the way we've been for years. It's the way you talk to me, the way you look at me like I'm something you have to settle for. I can't do it anymore." I felt my pulse pounding in my ears, my body tensing as I fought the urge to yell, to tell him that he was being ridiculous, that he was the one giving up, that he was the one throwing everything away like it was nothing. "So, what? You just decided this without even talking to me? You just made up your mind that you're done?" "I had to," he said simply, his voice still frustratingly calm. "Because if I didn't, we'd just keep doing this forever. We'd keep pretending we're fine, keep brushing everything under the rug until one day, it's not just one fight. It's everything." I swallowed hard, my throat dry, my nails digging into my palms. "And the kids?" My voice wavered slightly, and I hated it, hated that he could hear it, hated that I sounded anything other than furious. "You're just going to walk away from them too?" His expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened slightly, his shoulders tensing just a little.
"No.
I'm not walking away from them. I'll figure out a schedule. I'll still be their dad, Claire. But I can't be your husband anymore." Something inside me cracked at those words, something I had been holding on to, without even realizing it. I had spent the last 2 weeks telling myself that he just needed time, that he would come home, that he would get over whatever this was. But now, hearing him say it so plainly, so matter-of-factly, I finally understood that he wasn't coming back. This wasn't a fight. This was the end. "So that's it," I said, my voice hollow now, my arms still crossed like they could somehow hold me together. "You're just done. Just like that." He sighed, running a hand over his face like he was already exhausted with this conversation. "Claire, I've been done for a long time. I just didn't want to admit it."
I didn't know what to say to that.
I didn't know how to argue with something that felt so final, so unshakable, so inevitable. I wanted to scream at him, wanted to tell him that he was making a mistake, that he was walking away from something that could still be fixed, but the words wouldn't come. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper, and when he held it out to me, I already knew what it was before I even touched it. My fingers trembled slightly as I took it, my stomach dropping as I unfolded it and saw exactly what I had been dreading. Divorce papers. I stared at them for a long time, my chest tight, my breath coming too fast, my mind trying to process the reality of what was happening. When I finally looked back up at him, he was already at the door, his hand on the knob, his body already half turned away from me. "I'll give you some time to look over them," he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "Let me know when you're ready to talk about the next steps." And then, before I could say anything, before I could even think of something to stop him, he opened the door and walked out. I didn't chase him. I didn't call after him. I just stood there, the papers shaking slightly in my hands, listening to the sound of his car starting, listening to the quiet hum of the engine fading into the distance, listening to the empty silence of a house that no longer felt like a home. And for the first time since this all started, I let myself admit it. I had finally pushed him too far. And now, I had to live with it.